Gather around, kids. Uncle Bruce has a lesson to drop on y'all. And that's not all good things come to those who wait. Or was it about letting sleeping dogs lie? Wait, it might be something about letting your dreams outgrow the shoes of your expectations. Well, I'm not very smart, and I was never good at proverbs. I just wanted to make a joke about Malice having big shoes. This is the final boosh. Today I'm covering Malice, and this is Nostalgia-tards. Malice is a platformer and nail in the coffin simulator that was developed by Argonaut Games. It was released for the original Xbox and PS2 in 2004. Initially beginning development for the PS1, the original idea of Malice featured a bright and colorful world. It was said to be Alice in Wonderland with a darker twist. The game by the looks of it could have featured more fairy tales as well, but I guess we'll never know. Judging by the prototype footage, it felt like Argonaut wanted this to be a very big game for the studio. This version of Malice was slated to be released sometime between 1999 and 2000, and it seems by the history of games being developed around that time that they were stretched a little thin, having several games released in 2000, none of which were Malice, but did include that banger Alien Resurrection movie tie-in game that took a whopping 5 years of development time. By this time, Malice was still planned on being released, but unfortunately, despite being on the legacy engine that was Croc 2, with most of the gameplay apparently already being put in, the game will still need a good amount of work to be done that included ironing out some major bugs, putting in cutscenes, and other things that would jam the game up a whole nother year. Eventually, Fox Interactive pulled out of support in the game, leaving Argonaut without backing for their project. But with the Xbox soon to come out, the studio turned their attention on Malice being one of the first ones on the console. So now the PS1 game had to become an Xbox launch title, with reworking the game proving challenging, with the team having to make a lot of compromises. But in 2001, Microsoft ended up walking away as well. Finding themselves without a home once again, in comes Sierra to sweep them under their umbrella, even coming with the added bonus of not only featuring the music of the ska punk band No Doubt, but also having the band voice several of the game's cast, with Gwen Stefani voicing the titular character. Malice had to be altered further to fit this new direction, which only made the game development suffer more. With development still a mess, and combined with several of their games between 2000 and 2003 having low sales, Sierra dropped out. After being delayed in October of 2003, Malice was cancelled several months later in May of 2004. The game was revived once again when it was picked up by Mad Duck Productions, and what could be cobbled together was quietly released in June of 2004. Overambition, mismanagement, overzealous publishers, and ego are some of the reasons that could be attributed to Malice's unfortunate fate from PS1 Classic to ended up being a B-label game, says Jazz Sands, former Argonaut Games CEO. The game opens with Malice in the middle of storming some kind of base on a mission to confront the main antagonist, Dog God. Or not, that's what it feels like she's doing. She also doesn't have a weapon for some reason. Anyway, after dodging some gunfire, she quickly enters a nearby room when she conveniently finds him and is shocked that he's there for some reason. Then that proceeds to Malice getting her head bitten off. In the underworld, maybe? Malice discovers that goddesses are denied an afterlife for some reason, and her death causes some kind of imbalance. That or Dark God is on some kind of reign of terror. Then she's just allowed to leave and ends up in the main hub, the Orrery. She then meets the Metal Guardian and is tasked to locate the logic keys in order to locate Dog God and have a rematch with him. The rest of the game feels like a bunch of disjointed events given the narrowest of narrative justifications to exist. At the end of the game, Malice finds a giant metal version of herself that she rebuilds and the Metal Guardian repairs, and she uses that armor during the final confrontation with Argonaut. After he is defeated, Malice releases some kind of energy and returns the world quote unquote back to normal. A mission that she never sees she had to do, and the game ends. What is she, Mother Nature or something? She does say, "Don't call me mother, call me Malice," so I don't know, fuck it, maybe. The game doesn't really have a real narrative. Things just kinda happen and one event doesn't exactly feed into the other correctly. The dialogue and humor of Malice feels to me that they're trying to channel something of a Conker's Bad Fur Day. Dialogue often tries to break the fourth wall by making fun of platform gaming tropes or self-deprecating humor. Some jokes work for me, most of them fall flat. Technically speaking, the graphics are mediocre. The game has jaggers all over the place and the texture work can go from bland to nasty. Some of the more nastier textures look straight up muddy. This can especially be seen on Malice herself, whose shirt looked like it's painted on. Malice is supposed to have on an orangish undershirt, and since that matches the color of her hair, it looks like her upper half is covered in hair. This might come as a hot take, but I actually enjoy the graphics of Malice. Not on a technical level, hell no, but from an overall art design perspective. I like most of the environments that are visited. They're all varied, some revisits aside. Now, I'm not talking about everything. The Siren Tree, Piston Hell, and the lava level looks good, with everything else looking about average. Same goes to the character designs. Ignoring the super low textures, I enjoy a few of them. I like all the crow designs because they remind me of the Squirrel Army from Conker's Bad Fur Day, and some of the bosses look cool. Looking like an artist from Rare picked up a how to draw manga book aside, Malice's design just screams early 2000s. From her flared jeans, crop top, and questionable tattoos for a girl her age, I do like the look. I'm sure she's meant to be some kind of juxtaposition to the fantasy world she finds herself in, and it has to be safe to assume that she gained this look during Argonaut's time with Sierra when they thought Gwen Stefani would be voicing the character. But for all it's worth, I think she looks cool, it works for me. Of course, with the PS2 being weaker than the Xbox in the graphics department, Malice looks worse overall compared to it. But I don't know, I feel like the PS2 version kinda has the edge here. The Xbox version of Malice has a real hard-on for bump mapping, which would look super good if the game was released as intended, but by 2004, these kind of graphics weren't going to blow anybody away. At best, it just helps with making this version of the game inconsistent. Some areas will be bumpy as hell, and most areas will have the expected low-res treatment with blocky characters to boot. And this is where I believe the PS2's Malice looks better. Since the console couldn't handle all that bumpy goodness, it had to be downgraded, and that makes the game look a lot more consistent across the board because everything just looks like mud. The music of Malice might be the best thing the game has going for it, and while it's not amazing or anything, at the very least there's a couple of good tunes. I don't know how much of it is a holdover from the previous version because the music retains a lot of that storybook and or whimsical nature that had to be heavily represented in those early builds, but not really represented in the final version of the game. I heard a lot about how the game has bad voice acting, but I think it's fairly solid. The characters sound appropriate enough and it feels like the actors are at least giving some effort to it. Some may say Malice sounds dry and low effort, but I think that's the point. I think she's supposed to sound like a typical vapid volley girl or something. I don't know, the voice acting sounds really deliberate to me, I like it enough. The dialogue feels fairly harmless too. Some of the jokes make me smirk a bit. I never laughed or anything, but it got a reaction at the very least. I guess if I had to complain about anything openly, it'll be that they talk a little too much. You enter a scene and when you think they're finished talking, they just keep going.
Hey, Skullboy, you seen a kind of juju freak anywhere around here? My fort's got an appointment in his neck.
Oh, don't say you don't recognize me, girlfriend.
Juju, man?
Like, duh.
You got a new look. Don't want to disappoint you, but that electric chair thing is so last season.
Laugh it up, Carrot Top. You're gonna be tittering out the other side of your mangled little butt after you've gone a couple of rounds with the all-improved Juju Man.
All improved? Looks like you died of rat poisoning.
Hey, don't bug me, Mama. I'm still working on the look.
And this includes not hiding behind wimpy henchmen?
Not really. I just kinda killed all those guys.
You killed your own henchmen. Dude, what is wrong with you?
It's a bad guy thing. You wouldn't understand. Come on, let's mix it up. I'm feeling evil and kinda frisky.
It starts to feel a little awkward. When these scenes overstay their welcome, it's kind of like you're watching a comedy skit that's lasting a little too long, or when you try to get away from a conversation from someone you really don't feel like talking to. It happens with most of the cutscenes too. Just two characters standing, bobbing around, with consistent shot, reverse shot being spammed, no other camera angles to spice things up. It's awkward and strange.
As a cruel war rages, and the future hangs by a thread, an unlikely hero rises to challenge destiny. Malice, armed and dangerous, she must heal the fractured timelines of a world gone mad. Malice, the future lies in your hands. This game has been rated T-14.
Malice, from my perspective, is a massive step up from the Croc games, having the player explore huge, colorful worlds, interacting with various lively characters while collecting gems, keys, and other objects to progress. During this adventure, Malice will be able to transform into a cat, use a variety of magics with different effects on the gameplay, and intersections where she's being dragged around by a giant dog, and having to chase a creature by the name of the Juju Man around as he uses his magic to slow you down. This is very much a platformer that I enjoy very much. Huh? Shit, I was talking about the unreleased PlayStation beta footage again, wasn't I? Let me try that again. If you're a player that loved the bland Croc games and always wondered what those games would look like if the entire thing was left unfinished and had to be pieced together in a form that's something that resembles a game, well, that's hyper specific, but what's left of Argonauts has got you covered. Malice's gameplay is so lifeless and generic that I can put a picture of the box art up and just type "it's a platformer" on the bottom of the screen, and that could probably serve as the whole review. But let's talk about it anyway, so we can possibly hit that sweet 20-minute runtime. Malice works like your typical platformer, which means you'll be running, jumping, collecting crap, and engaging in simplistic combat. And right off the bat, if I'm going to give the game credit at all, it might as well be that the controls are very good. Piloting Malice around feels nice. Her running speed feels just right, and her jump is just fully enough to have a good amount of control over it. As a matter of fact, the level design, while not anything special and especially boring as hell, does a good job considering what Malice can and can't do. There was never a moment where I feel like the level design was pulling a dick move or anything, which makes the Malice platformer and around fun at times. So when it comes to the art of running and jumping, Malice is fairly competent. Shame the same can't be said for its combat. It's so dull that it might as well be non-existent. You just stand in one spot while enemies rush at you mindlessly. Malice has 2 attacks, a quick swipe with her weapon and a slower overhead bash that creates an AoE quick effect. They both stun enemies the exact same way, so there's no reason not to use a quicker attack almost exclusively. This makes the overhead bash not entirely useful, with it only coming into any meaningful play for 1 or 2 tasks, and doing more damage to bosses. So most fights will just involve enemies popping on the screen and just mashing the attack button while they march headfirst into your attacks. It wouldn't be that big of an issue if the game didn't use combat as a progression blocker as much as it does. Over the course of the game, Malice will obtain several magical abilities, 8 in total, that will require the use of mana. These are Glide, Bullet Shield, Speed, Weapon Boost, Healing, Damage Shield, Slow, and Nuke magics. These abilities outside of the Glide and Weapon Boost don't come into use outside of the first time that you use them, which is fine by me. They're not needed to complete the game, as Malice can make do just fine without them, because the game is easy enough. Platforming is never challenging, enemies aren't dangerous enough to worry about, and they even leave behind health after they're killed, making healing magic useless and redundant. The game features 8 very linear worlds that will have you doing some amount of platforming and puzzle solving, but most of the time the game will usually have you collecting X amount of Y or killing a certain number of enemies to progress, and it gets very repetitive. But like I said, there's times where the game has other ideas, such as guiding little robots past obstacles, performing memory puzzles, and stealth sections. These are just as bad as you think they are, and these serve as nice little breaks from the overall vapid collecting and monster killing. The only thing of actual value that Malice can collect are heart containers that will increase her maximum health by 1 after getting 10 of them, and blue and yellow mana crystals that will restore 10 to 50% of her mana respectively. She also upgrades her weapon throughout the game, from the Mace of Club, Clockwork Hammer, to the Quantum Fork, all of which increases your damage output. Usually to obtain the logic keys, Malice will have to face off against a boss. If you didn't know Malice had any connection to the Croc games, these will be a dead giveaway. It's the exact same thing as those games. A boss will attack you while you run in a circle until they leave themselves vulnerable to an attack. Using weapon boost will help speed these things along. Although near the end of the game, these bosses begin to take forever to take down, and even buffing your damage doesn't help. The final boss, Dog God, feels like 10 to 20 minutes of dodging the same pattern over and over again.
Brian writes, while the graphics are anything to drool over, the actual gameplay makes up for it. People might hate the storyline, but come on, this is a platform game here. Who cares about the story? Progressing through the levels is simply a joy. I can't believe more people haven't bought this game. Oh wait, people hate platform games now. I forgot. I can't really blame them though. After all, game makers haven't had any creative idea in years. For boss fights, the few there are here, rather, are usually pretty fun. It's time to look into this wonderful platform game.
Alright, settle down, dude. Is there such thing as toxic positivity? If not, this has to be it. I wouldn't say that Malice's gameplay makes up for anything really, unless you literally enjoy mindless collectathons, which this game is. You calling returning to an empty hub world after finishing each level in your linear platformer simply a joy. Okay. People didn't buy fucking Malice because who the hell would in 2004? Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal, Spyro Hero's Tale, Mega Man 03, Metroid Zero Mission, Jak 3, and Sly 2 Band of Thieves. Some of these games are some of the best of their individual series. You even have Crash Twinsanity if you want to give Malice competition for the incomplete let's scoop up what we can and ship it type situation. Which is a much better game, by the way. No creative ideas, 2004 was a hell of a year for the genre. The boss fights are dope. Seriously, why is this dude simping for Malice so hard? Is she a VTuber? I guess not, because she's not a 40-year-old man in disguise. So I'm just gonna assume this guy's a frustrated former developer. Malice was a rough sit, man. And I was hoping to find some more good things to say from within it, but there's nothing there. Hell, the positives I gave the game throughout the video might have just been me stretching just to say nice things in general and to prevent it from being a completely negative affair. This is one of the hardest games to write about on this channel so far because while I don't think the game is 100% awful, it's so devoid of life or anything of meaningful substance beyond its troubled development history that I constantly found myself looking at my keyboard, wondering what to say about the game outside of blatantly describing what the game is. Which I guess makes sense seeing that this game is just a Frankenstein of what was left of a cancelled game. As I played, I also found myself wondering what the PS1 version of the game could have been like, because your mind will wander with how monotonous this game actually is. Also, I couldn't shake this strange feeling that Malice felt like a bad sequel. Like the original Malice came out and years later a different dev team got a hold of the IP and made what we got today. You know, like Crash Wrath of Cortex or Spyro Into the Dragonfly. The game feels oddly familiar enough, but something is missing. Something the older games had that this game simply didn't possess. I remember my brother and I following Malice's development when we were younger and learning of his cancellation and thinking the game never came out, not actually getting to play what actually did into our early adulthood, and kinda gaslighting ourselves into thinking it was a good game because of the sheer fact of waiting for it for so long. But after this playthrough, I just can't pretend to live in that world anymore. Bland platforming, mostly useless magic system, terrible combat, tedious collectathon gameplay, music that I quite like, but I wouldn't argue if someone would call it forgettable, and a story that feels like just story beats with no narrative connection between them. Malice sucks. Put away the red hot poker, I know. Malice could have at least been two things throughout its sad history. A memorable PS1 classic remembered fondly to this day, or a killer launch app for the original Xbox with hopefully several good sequels to enjoy and look back on. We got neither. What we did get was a pieced together zombie of a game that played it too safe and was past its prime by 2004 and should have stayed cancelled. We'll see you next time on Nostalgia-tards.